Money magnifies who you already were. Because as a billionaire, I can do anything I want. I can go get a private jet. I can get a yacht. I can buy almost anything I want. And because you can do that, because you can almost do anything you want with your time, you now do it.
And so we need to redo the movie industry. Again, what's happened is people are coming out of a position of fear because they're afraid of losing money. So they're putting all the same movies out there. And audiences are going to some extent, but there's a whole group of audiences out there that doesn't go to the movie theaters because there's nothing good.
Welcome everybody to another very special episode of Connection is Magic. We have a lovely guest in the building, literally in every sense of that word, Steve Sarowitz today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, when you walked in the room, the whole energy shifted. I just want you to know that. So you're like a beaming light. I don't know if you've been told that before, but I'm just telling you, really, it's real. That's not just fodder. So
thank you. I have a daughter who's a beaming light. I can't see myself, but I can see my daughter.
Maybe
it's genetics. No, I don't know what it is. I think she could have been raised by wolves and she would be a beaming light.
This is what's good about this show is, we peel back all the layers of somebody's life journey, right? So I assume there was days where you weren't the beam of light, right?
Oh yeah.
And we're going to get into that. So just some of the evolution of how you've ended up as you are today. Some of your core principles and philosophies. It's safe to say you're a guy that believes in connection being magic.
I do.
Figuring out how to maybe make more of that happen in today's world.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's a big core for me as well. Before we started recording, we were talking about this idea of the ingredient of love being able to be perceived and felt. Isn't that really cool? Like we talked about food, I think we were talking about.
It's everything.
It's everything. Can you riff on that a little bit for us?
So like what we were talking about, you go to a restaurant and if you knew the chefs just didn't care and the waiters didn't care, describe a restaurant like that and you can't imagine the food being any good because, if there's no love, then the chef isn't going to put the love into the food. The waiter's not going to serve it with love. Everything is better with love. There's this light that we get. I call it a divine light. We're all reflecting God. Now, I know there's atheists out there who don't believe in God, but you're reflecting something. Maybe you don't call that God, but you call it light. We're all reflecting this divine light, this wonderful light. And without that light, we live in a dead world. Have you ever been to a formerly communist country?
I've not been, but I'm aware, obviously, of communist countries.
So I went to Prague a few years ago, before COVID, and we went there and you saw these really drab gray buildings and then you saw these beautiful, colorful buildings, a lot of them churches, and they were side by side and yet in the same geography. And yet one looked like it was dead and the other looked like it was living. Think about beautiful architecture. How much of the beautiful architecture in the world is religious? All the religions.
It's true.
There's beautiful mosques, there's beautiful churches. There's beautiful temples. It's in praise of the same God. There's only one God. There's not a Jewish God or a Muslim God or a Christian God or a Bahai God. Yeah. We have that light. And once you reflect that light, that's beautiful. In everything you do, whether it be food, art, movies, and business.
Absolutely agree. Being able to be light when, life can challenge us. There can be adversity thrown our way. And I feel like staying in the light, I lost my dad when I was 12. I've overcome chronic illness. I was switched schools 15 times. I was bullied at all these schools. And I've somehow found a way to hang on and keep my joy and my light and love other people. But I think I'm an anomaly in some sense because a lot of people that go through some of these experiences become very bitter. And I don't know if you've heard this thing that hurt people. Like it's very true. And healed people heal people.
I just read Terry Crew's book, which I highly recommend, called Tough.
Big fan of his, yeah.
And he was a very hurt person, and he was hurting people, and he was I loved the book, and first of all, I liked Terry Crews going into it. I love him going out of it. Love to work with him someday. He really acknowledges this hurt he had. He had an abusive father. His mother beat him, and he's showing how this became him hurting other people.
In the media, billionaires are painted with a very bad brush. Would you agree? I think Bernie Sanders, his whole thing almost was that the billionaires, but we need to get you out there more and more because, you're such a great example to counter. Now, there are examples of billionaires that aren't so great. Elon Musk has taken a lot of heat recently, and Sam Bankman-Fried has taken a lot of heat. And then religion is another one where it's had not the best connotation, right? So it's just, isn't that interesting how you're kind of Trying to be an example as an opposing or a more reasonable force, I think, to these two categories. Do you get what I'm saying?
I would say that it's reasonable to say that there shouldn't be, there should be either no billionaires or very few billionaires. And so me as a billionaire, I shouldn't be. I get that. But that's inequities in the world that need to be fixed. It's not my fault. What I can say is, what can I do with this money? I intend not to die a billionaire. I've said this many times publicly, and I'll say it again, that I want to give away the great majority of my money before I die. I don't want to die a billionaire, because I don't think it's right that I have this much money. And well, people say, well, just give it away to me right now. And I always say the same thing when someone says that to me. Great. What are you going to do with it? And then the air gets kind of silent, huge silence, nothing. Because honestly, how do you use this money? And so what I really am dedicating my life to doing is, how do I use this money the best way I can to make the world a better, more unified and just and equitable place?
So you said, as a society, we have all the material wealth we need. It's just not distributed correctly. If we were spiritually wealthy, it would be distributed correctly.
Unquestionably.
Yeah.
So think about this. So think about how we actually think. I'm a white, or you might say white passing, coming from a Jewish background. People don't realize that about Jews, as Jews are Middle Eastern. I'm genetically Middle Eastern, but forget about that. I'm white passing. I walk down the street. I'm looked at as a white person.
White guy, yeah.
My friend and colleague at Wayfarer, the president of Wayfarer, Jamie, is looked at as a black person. By the way, Jamie is half white. We are one human race. First of all, let's get that straight. We are one human race. And the fact that my skin is a little lighter than Jamie's doesn't make an iota of difference to God, and shouldn't make an iota of difference to anyone else, but it does. And so the fact, what I don't like is we go to two extremes. One is race is everything, and we have to look at it, and sometimes it even becomes anti-white. And Terry Crews was talking about that in his book, and I couldn't agree more. And I don't go there. I think white people are just as good as black people and can be just as nice as black people, and black people can be just as bad as white people, and just as ignorant and stupid. And there's no, I don't think white people are good or bad. I don't think black people are good or bad. What I do think is that when Jamie walks down the street, on average, he's going to get treated worse than me over and over and over again to this very day. And that is what we need to change, period. Jamie needs to get treated equally to me in every way. Not better than me, but equally to me. Because if we switched it and made him be treated better than me, then you've just reversed the problem. We're all brothers and sisters, all of us. And so we have to do it as one human family. That has to be the kernel of the start, the kernel of truth that we cling on to, and then that has to spread to love for every human being you meet, with the understanding that inequities have to be wiped out along the way. It can't just be in words only, but in deeds. We need to act, truly act like we're one human family.
Hey guys, just want to take a minute and say thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you're appreciating the content and that you are being uplifted and inspired. Please hit the subscribe button if you've not done so already. We've got so many more cool guests, powerful interviews, just raw truth being shared to uplift and inspire humanity. If you have not done so already, please follow the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It means the world to us as we continue to grow this channel and this platform to continue to spread positivity in a world that really is hurting right now. Thank you so much for your support. It means the world. God bless. Amen. There's a saying I like, and by the way, this applies to entrepreneurship, which we're both entrepreneurs. People overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 10. Have you heard that before?
I have not, but it's a nice saying.
Isn't it nice? Yeah, so it's like, to all of the points that you were making right there, just because we're not seeing this change happen in 8 years from now, we could think about how much further down the field this ball could be, is what I'm saying.
I've got a funny story that way. I have a company that I ran for, about 8-9 years. I just sold it last year. Started in 2013, so 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Ran it for 9 years. After 5 years, see if you can, as an entrepreneur, see if you can get these numbers. We had $6 million in expenses and $1.5 million in revenue.
That's not good.
It really wasn't.
Yeah.
And so the president, or the CEO of the company I'd started, Paylocity, says to me, why are you wasting your time with this? It's not going anywhere. Why don't you just shut it down? It'll just save you money. And I said to him, I think it's going to work. Just give it a little more time. I sold that same company to him last year for $60 million. He just thought, well, why are you wasting your time? You don't need the money and you're losing money. It's not going anywhere. And I said, I think it's going to go somewhere. I think we're right there. let's give it another year or two to see. And I was right. And so what happened is we started growing at that point, and we started growing and growing. And by the time I sold it to him, we were projecting about 20 million in forward-looking revenue. My point on that is the 10-year thing. So we take it out 9 years. It wasn't successful in a year. It wasn't even successful in 5 years, but it was successful in 9 years.
There you go.
And so you just have to, sometimes you have to know when to quit as an entrepreneur.
That's right. And speaking of which, I have an example on this too.
Okay,
you can tell I've done my research on you. Your very first big business failure I heard you share was a Chinese delivery service there, right?
It was.
It was called Yin and Yang Delivery or something, right? Wasn't that it?
Yin Yang's Orient Express.
And this wasn't planned. This was just completely happenstance. I'm wearing a Yin Yang shirt for those listening to the podcast right now. That's one of the most relatable things. Like, you know, having a company go public or something, these are big milestones that not a lot of people, you know, ever see, but everybody has experienced failure when they're going after something. I think that's so relatable. So that being your first outing in quote unquote business, what did you learn? How did, you know, did you fall gracefully? Did you handle that whole situation poorly on reflection? Talk to us about that.
I was a terrible boss. My idea of delegating was for me to, I was being 6'6", physically push someone out of the way and say, I can do it better than you. Let me show you. I apologized, by the way, to anyone I did that to. What was this, 30 years ago? I apologize. I didn't know what I was doing. I wouldn't do it today, and I'm really sorry. But I wasn't good at delegating. I thought I could do everything better than everyone else. I was young and arrogant. And maybe, you know, what I've learned is maybe you can do something better than everyone else, but you have to let everyone else shine. And the secret to having a really successful business is learning how to step aside and let other people shine, and really find the right people who can shine, and then encourage them and mentor them and show them how they can shine. And if, you know, the way to make money is to have people be very productive. It didn't make sense for me to be productive and everyone else to be sitting there kind of stunted because I was busy doing their work. Now, maybe they wouldn't be as good as me, but maybe if I let them, they'd be better than me.
And one of the sayings I heard recently, which I love, which speaks to this, is, you know, great leadership is more about being a great facilitator than a dictator.
That's exactly what I try to do with philanthropy in particular, but also in business now, is I want to be the wind beneath someone else's wings. So my business partner at Wayfarer Studios, who I adore, is Justin Baldoni from Jane the Virgin. And Justin is a very talented actor and a very talented director, and I love him personally, and I think he's really good, especially as a director, and he's about to direct a very prominent movie, It Ends With Us, which is the #1 best-selling New York Times bestseller. It's about a woman named Lily who has, in her past, her dad was abusive, and now she's met this very charming man who turns out to be abusive. And so Justin is going to direct this movie, and we're very excited. It should be filming in the springtime. And I just love the idea of Justin directing another movie. He's directed Clouds. It was named as one of the best Disney Plus movies. He directed 5 Feet Apart, which did very well. I just think he's going to be really, in the end of it, known as a great director. My goal with Justin is to really be a good partner to him. I'm senior to him. I'm 19 years older, to provide the funding and the encouragement for him to really spread his wings and be. The other thing I love about Justin is when he talks, he's spellbinding, because he's got millions of followers on Instagram, and people are like, oh yeah, I love his whole thing. You know, like you said when I was in the room, I was a light. Justin's the same way, in my opinion.
You feel it, yeah.
And maybe more so, because I don't have millions of followers. I just want that light to shine, and I want that light to shine to more people, so people can see this beautiful message he's spreading, which is the same message. We're both Baha'is about the oneness of humanity. And I think he's got Man Enough, and one of the big things with Man Enough is men embracing compassion, and to really show our vulnerability that men don't often want to show, to communicate fully.
That's what Connection is Magic is about.
There's a beautiful TED Talk by a black woman, I can't think of her name, where she talks about calling people in versus calling people out. And that's something that's missing in our society.
Really well said. That illustrates the macro kind of to me. That's the macro. What about the micro? I think it'd be interesting. Like, say you have a coworker who, you know, you have hate towards, or somebody took your parking space.
I have a daughter who I adore. I use that word once or twice, but I really do. Everyone who knows me knows I have 20-year-old twins. I love them both. Nice. David and Sarah goes to Northwestern. And Sarah bought a house, or we actually bought a house for her in Evanston, and Sarah has an issue with headaches. She has migraine headaches really bad, to the point where we thought that the headaches were so bad that we didn't think she'd make it through high school. And she got into Northwestern. We were pleasantly surprised. And we bought the house. One of the reasons we bought the house for her is because she needs a quiet place, because she can't have loud noises. So her next door neighbor doesn't know this, and her next door neighbor has been making a terrible ruckus. Publicly, there was an article published. She complained when we wanted to do construction. She got all the other neighbors on her side with the idea that my daughter, who has massive migraine headaches, like for much of her life, she's had a headache every single day. And that my daughter's been having loud parties, which is literally physically impossible for my daughter to do. On top of it, my daughter is the reason why I adore her so much is she's a lovely, kind, considerate, and thoughtful person, extremely intelligent. But the back of her card says, I hope something good happens to you today. And that's who she is. So the neighbor really hates her, but doesn't know her. So I took that upon myself to try to get the neighbor to ease up a little bit. And I thought about it as a father, sometimes, this is me being human.
That's the instinct still, even instinct. For you, that you be loved, you're loved, Steve, but you have to fight that instinct, yeah?
So I had to fight down my first reaction, which was to go to the neighbor and say, do you know who you're messing with? I'm a billionaire, I can make your life terrible.
Yeah.
And I didn't do that. I have to say I thought about doing it, but I didn't do that.
It's honest.
We gave her a beautiful gift basket.
You gave the neighbor a beautiful gift basket.
Yeah, we gave neighbors on both sides a beautiful gift basket and said, thank you for your patience during the construction of the house. She sent me a thank you back, so maybe it's the start of something new. Martin Luther King said, you can't overcome hate with hate, only love can do that. And you can't overcome darkness with darkness, only light can do that.
This is a good segue, because we didn't record this yet. I think we talked about it before we started recording, but I've worked at record labels, and I think that there is a lot of dark energy in entertainment, right? Because there's a lot of ego and hubris, and money can change people, but I want to be careful, because I think I've heard, and I've done a lot of work on this, and it's cool that I'm sitting here with a billionaire. I realize money just reveals people. It doesn't change people. Do you agree with this as a billionaire? Can you back me up?
I'm going to go one step further. Money magnifies who you already were. Because as a billionaire, I can do anything I want. I can go get a private jet. I can get a yacht. I can buy almost anything I want. And because you can do that, because you can almost do anything you want with your time, you now do it. We have a family foundation. I have a Bahai or inspired foundation, which is the Wayfarer Foundation. I have a movie company, and now I'm getting into the movie theater business.
So you were already this guy, this giving, good-natured guy underneath that. I mean, before the money showed up.
I was giving before I became a Bahai, but I think I become more giving and more directed in terms of how I want to give. I think I have a lot of direction from the Bahai teachings. But yes, I think it does bring out who I am. I can give away money on a much larger scale. I can make these movies. I can with Justin and Jamie work on Wayfarer, which is trying to take Hollywood, and we want to be light. That's the thing. You're talking about the darkness. We are light, and you talk to our employees, they'll tell you they get it. We're different. We're not perfect, but we're different.
I heard you say in a talk where we first met each other at that dinner we were at, you said, my team told me we were gonna lose money on this project that was gonna be really impactful and be a light. And you said you were okay with it. Am I right? Do I remember that correctly? Yeah.
I mean, we are not trying to lose money on every project. The number one thing we have, and our only thing we have is non-negotiable, is we have to make good movies, good quality movies that make the world better, and TV shows and podcasts. The second thing after that is make money. If you take Hollywood, it's reversed. It's make money at all costs. And if it does good, that's okay. But with us, it's non-negotiable that it's good. That it's good quality and it does good, and we hope it makes money. We just are so numb to the violence in the movies. I'm not. We'll have violence in some of our movies, but I will not do movies that are anywhere near as violent as what Hollywood's putting out. One of the problems I have with violence in movies is it's so common now, it's ubiquitous, and I don't like that. I would rather have a violent movie being shocking, and everyone says, oh my God, that movie's too violent, than it be every day. Same thing you said with video games. It's not shocking when you see a violent video game. It should be. We are essentially two things. We are, as I mentioned, animal, and we're divine. The godly piece of us is love and kindness and compassion. Again, for those who don't believe in God, the higher part of us is love and kindness and mercy and compassion and wisdom.
I think religious or not, everybody should be able to relate to that statement.
Yeah, I'm pulling it out because so many people are anti-religion. But those are the things. I'll call them divine virtues. You can just call them virtues if that's better for you. Not for you, but for other people. And then the negative things are the animalistic things, the physical, material things, lust and greed and violence.
The instinct to want to go wring the neck of your daughter's neighbors. And we have some of that in us, right?
We have that, absolutely. Yeah. What we need to do as human beings to be happy and to be fulfilled individually and collectively is lean into the higher. And Hollywood and the news media lean into the lower. Why? Because it's a quick dollar. But it's not the dollar. In the long run, you will make more money here. I mean, sometimes in the short run, you can do very well. But in the long run, you always do better here. Think of the best movies, most successful movies of all time. A lot of them are right here. Some of them might be here, but a lot of them are right here in the upper that inspire you.
I think Forrest Gump was maybe one of the most legendary. It feels, right? Iconic.
And Forrest Gump had both, actually. Forrest Gump had some of the, but it was really much more of an...
It felt uplifting.
It was uplifting. The movie Up, speaking of uplifting.
I think about that as well.
A lot of movies that do very well are uplifting. The other thing is, right now, we're at an interesting time in society.
Talk to us about that.
So what the Bahai faith says is that we are having a dual process going on. The old world order is disintegrating. The new world order is rising. I love the term new world order, by the way. And people say, well, I'm really scared of the new world order because my pastor or priest has told us that the new world order is a really terrible thing. And I say, I agree. I couldn't agree anymore. Can you imagine? I mean, the terrible new world order, it's warring, nuclear-armed countries that hate each other. It's prejudice. It's greed. It's superstition. Sorry. That's the current world order. I got a little confused. That's really scary. Now, let me tell you about the new world order that your pastor should be telling you about, because this is what the Bible actually talks about. It's about the New Jerusalem. It's about Christ returning and bringing to us this peaceful, unified humanity. This is all the New World Order. This is exactly what it is. It's one unified humanity. That's the New World Order, and it's happening. That New World Order is unfolding, and the existing forces are fighting it. So when you see racism brought to the forefront, or anti-Semitism, or Islamophobia, or any kind of religious prejudice, sexism, nationalism, when you see these dividing into tribes, it's actually the old world order clinging to power, and they're losing, and they cling harder. And so because they have the power, because they currently have the power and they're losing it, they're the ones in the spotlight. But what's pulling them down and slowly rising up is this new world of love and kindness and mercy and compassion.
I want to get to a couple of important general questions I think people might be interested by. Okay. So what was it like the day you became a billionaire? Because you're already sort of wealthy, you said, right? What was it like the day that you kind of hit that billion status? Like what goes through one's head when that happens? I'm curious.
There's two things that go through my head, and they're competing. One is, oh my God, that's terrible, because I'm a Bahai and we're not supposed to have extremes of wealth and poverty. And the other is, wow, I made it. Checkbox, I became a billionaire. Both of them were true. In the end, it doesn't matter that I'm a billionaire. I can do more good for the world as a billionaire. There's things I can do. There's companies I'm looking to invest in now. I have one that I'm looking to invest in that is going to do really positive and wonderful virtues for very young children in music and film, and I'm really excited about that. I'm excited about my movie theater, which I'm going to take over an existing movie theater and make it into a community center. And if that works, I can do that in several markets. And so it's going to be a movie theater, but it's also going to be a community center and show movies for children and have activities for children and then have director's cuts for adults. There's just ways I think you could change the theater business. And I'm excited about doing things like that. And I have the money to do that. You cannot be satisfied living in great wealth while someone down the block is starving. And I always remember that.
So you have to be active. You have to be actively helping where you can, where it makes sense to.
Tell the rich of the midnight sighings of the poor, lest heedlessness deprive them of the tree of wealth. It's warning the rich to hear the cries of the poor, lest we really ourselves deprive ourselves of spiritual success.
Yeah. You know how there's all this violence and we're kind of conditioned not to even recognize it anymore, you know? I mean, we live in LA. There's a homelessness crisis in LA. And I was driving the other day, and I'm not kidding you, there was somebody, you know, asking for money who looked like they were in pretty rough shape, and, you know, cars were going and everything. I was like, if that was a dog that was lost, there would be 7 cars stopping right now to get that dog. I'm serious.
People,
and so it's crazy.
People are, and I share this. People have mixed emotions about the homeless because most of the homeless have a drug or alcohol problem. And so people don't want to give them money because they're going to use it on drugs or alcohol.
Yeah.
I think we need to address the homeless problem. There's no question about it, but we have to address it at its root. So I had a friend who gave somebody who's homeless, a couple, a house, housing, maybe it was an apartment, and their problems got worse because before they had to work harder to get money and had less money for the drugs. And so because they got more, basically became financially better off, they did more drugs. And they actually physically hurt them. I think one of them ended up in the hospital very shortly thereafter.
Another question I wanted to ask you too that I think people would benefit from is mentorship. How important is mentorship? Do you remember when you got your first, big mentor and the impact maybe that had on your life?
Mentorship has not been real big with me.
Wow. Okay.
I had a great boss, and I learned from watching him. But when I was in California in 1996, I had some really good bosses along the way. But I would say I didn't have someone I particularly looked at as my mentor. I was very independent, wanted to do things.
So it's not a barrier to being successful then. You could read books, or you don't need.
I never read books either. I just.
But I'm certainly not alone in this thought, though, right? You hear about mentorship.
Different people learn differently. I learn by making mistakes, and I make them as many as I can, as quickly as I can, and I learn from them. Some people who are probably a lot smarter than me read books or get a mentor, but I'm not wired that way. I'm wired this way. I always talk about an entrepreneur. If there's a wall, you see a wall, or maybe someone else might see a wall, but we as entrepreneurs just walk through the wall.
That's it.
And then we wait for someone to clean up the mess afterwards.
Okay, so I feel so seen right now, Steve. Michelangelo has a beautiful quote that said, I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set it free. You see what I'm saying? But when you showed this is just a slab of marble to other people. Does that make sense?
I understand exactly what you're saying. And that's what I've done time and time again with businesses. I saw that there was a need for international payroll. I created it. I saw that there was a need for this payroll company. I created it. I see a need in the industry for movie companies. There's a huge need. I just talked to a movie theater owner before this interview, chain, and he's been a Paylocity customer for many years. He said, we need content. I've talked to several people. Movie theaters don't have good content right now. There's plenty of good movies out there. They're just not getting through to the movie theaters. And so we need to redo the movie industry. Again, what's happened is people are coming out of a position of fear because they're afraid of losing money. So they're putting all the same movies out there, and audiences are going to some extent, but there's a whole group of audiences out there that doesn't go to the movie theaters because there's nothing good.
Your film studio is called Wayfarer, which means a person who travels on foot. Why did you go with that name?
I didn't go with the name. Justin went with the name, and I bought into it.
Okay.
Love the name, but I didn't come up with it. You'd have to ask Justin. We're taking our friends on a spiritual journey.
Oh.
That's what Wayfarer is doing.
This idea of being a vessel, can you relate to that at all? I feel I want to tell you the true story. I recently got recognized for this show. Somebody was a fan of it. And it was my first ever time. I'm not Justin Baldoni, so that doesn't happen all the time. Yeah. But I was like, this is, and I analyzed the feeling of it after, and it felt kind of awkward and odd. And one of the thoughts I had that led me to feeling that way is I don't think it's really me. I think I'm channeling something.
Yeah, we are always, everything light. If I said anything intelligent this interview, that's Baha'u'llah or God speaking through me. If I said something dumb, which I'm sure I did, that's me.
That's good.
If you look throughout history, the messenger plants the seed. Individuals respond. At first, it seems like just random individuals. There's just a few of them. At first, it seems like it won't succeed. It's just a little tiny plant. And then that plant grows up, and it's this beautiful big fruit tree, towering apple tree. And then people eat those beautiful sweet apples, and that's the fruits, and that's the golden age of the religion. In the case of Judaism, it was the kingdom of Israel. In the case of Zoroastrianism, the incredible Persian Empire, the greatest empire of its day. The next great empire is the Maurya Empire, the greatest empire of its day. It was Buddhist. It was the fruit of Buddha. The fruit of Christianity, of Christ, is the Byzantine Empire, which these warring cities joined together into the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire. And that lasted for over 1,000 years. And then comes the incredible caliphate, the first caliphate, the golden age of Islam, where these people that were so warlike, they were killing each other so fast in war that women had become expendable and they were burying their daughters alive. As actually the Bahai writings say, these half-animal people rose up and created the greatest society of their age. For 500 years, this incredible golden age of Islam. Today, what's happening is you and I are just drops, and it seems individual for you and I, but it's really part of a collective advancement. And this collective advancement is hitting everybody. So although it seems like sometimes there's a pushback, which there is,
like you said, there's clinging with the old guard.
Yeah, you have to look at that racism as desperation, not as the real strength. The real strength is the majority of people who believe that everybody is human and that everybody comes from the same God. And if someone doesn't believe that, they just have to think for half a second, how could you possibly think that a black person comes from a different God than a white person or a brown person? It's crazy.
We're definitely trending to, humanity seems like it's waking up. I don't think there's any question about that. This show was really birthed from kind of my own sort of, I guess, ego death, if you will. And I got really passionate about, wanting to put something together that can teach people and show people how to use adversity, utilize it to literally become fuel for them becoming their greatest selves. Right? Can you riff on that a little bit about how to use adversity? Because as an entrepreneur, how much adversity, as a human, how much adversity, right?
If adversity befall me not in thy path, how can thou walk in the ways of them that are content with my pleasure? If trials afflict thee not in thy longing to meet me, how wilt thou attain the light in thy love for my beauty? So that's Baha'u'llah, hidden words.
Without the difficulties, without the challenges, how can we really appreciate the light?
The next one is, my calamity is my providence. Outwardly it is fire and vengeance, but inwardly it is light and mercy. You have to have this adversity. Without adversity, you can't appreciate life, really. It seems really bad. It seems like it's vengeance. But without calamity, you don't really get to the light. Think about if your life was really good. You walk down the street and the next thing someone just gives you a check. Says, here's $1 million.
Yeah.
And then someone feeds you and someone shines your tennis shoes and just everything you get, you want. Everything in life you get every day.
That would be hell.
It would be hell. And in fact, when we pursue our pleasures, when we actually pursue pleasure, that is hell. When we pursue good, it's heaven.
Define the difference between pleasure and good for people listening, though.
So when we look at the lower things, this is the lust, the greed, the envy, when we only pursue those things, I'm not saying that it's not great to have someone you find physically attractive and that the ways of the world are okay, but when you solely pursue those things and you don't pursue love, basically think of sex without love. Money without meaning. If you only go after the lower things and don't have the beautiful virtues, the divine virtues, I'll call them, that becomes hell.
I totally agree with that. And I'll just add one more thing to that is each time I encounter this big adversity, I really feel like it develops a part of me, almost waters it that I didn't know was there. It's like a seedling. Does this make sense too? There's like a seedling within me that I didn't know was there, that the adversity waters, and then I grow into this like next version of myself. And it's like, I can't believe that was there this whole time,
Sacrifice.
Like that type of thing.
Do you know what the definition of a sacrifice is?
What is that?
Sacrifice is getting rid of something lesser for something greater. So we think of a sacrifice as a negative thing, but a sacrifice is getting rid of something lesser. So I sacrifice money for something I want. I value the money, but I value the thing more.
Yeah.
I sacrifice my time for something better. How many parents wouldn't sacrifice for their children? And how many parents would ever regret that sacrifice, even if you didn't get anything for it? Even if at the end of the day, your children hated you, even if your children didn't succeed, I would never regret any sacrifice I've made for my children, and I would make that sacrifice and again and again and again. When we sacrifice, we give away the lesser for the greater. There's two human natures. There's the lower and the higher. So the lower, it's the devil. The devil in the Bahai teachings is not an actual devil, but the devil is our lower human nature. So that lower human nature is there in all of us, and there's always something that brings it out. And it's our job to transcend that lower human nature and create goodness and love. Whether you're doing it in a Christian or Bahai or Jewish, it's the same basic principle. You're trying to reach your higher self. And you do that with the help of God's teaching, with the help of prayer, of meditation. If you think life is bad, lean into love and virtue.
Those listening right now, Steve, there's probably somebody listening to this, right? That's like, maybe they're just in a very, very rough place right now. And so
turn to God.
Speaking directly, to them.
Turn to God and ask God to help you. Say, God, I'm ready. I need your help. Now think about that adversity, whatever adversity you're experiencing right now. Think of that as your providence and say to God, thank you for this adversity. Can you help me? I need your help. When God breaks us down to the point where we ask for God's help, then we've succeeded.
And then the light can
come
back.
in.
Yeah.
And I was reading in Terry Crew's book where he was having money issues, and then he realized he had to tithe. And when he opened that door and spread the light, all of a sudden his money issues went away.
And that can be counterintuitive because you're like, I don't, barely have enough to.
Mm-hmm. The tithing, what it did for him is it released it changed how he looked at money, and he now had abundance.
So do you see money as energy? Again, a billionaire, I got to ask a billionaire, but a lot of people see money as energy. Would you agree with that?
Money is a resource. Money is a resource which can be used. It's a tool. Money is a tool. Religion is a tool. And so both money and religion having been used so poorly for so many years. By the way, over 100 years ago, Abdu'l-Baha gave a beautiful speech on how religion had become worn out tradition and superstition, and because it had become so, the light of religion had been dimmed.
Yeah.
And he said in other places, he said, moving away from that type of religion, which causes conflict and strife, would be truly a religious act. But then in the next paragraph, he says, but then divine religion is what we need. So he's saying what we're seeing as religion is really bad. But then he doesn't say get away from religion. He says divine religion is what we need. When we accept the truth of all of God's prophets, not just one, then we get to unity and peace.
Beautiful. So you're very optimistic about where we are right now in the world overall.
We're at this precipice where it feels like we're going to drop off into an abyss, and it feels like we're all going to die, and it feels so terrible. And that's so great because I have the faith and I know how it ends.
I have to say one thing to this, though, Steve.
Yeah.
We could be manipulated and controlled, I think, if we're separated and anxious and scared. And there's a lot of theories that, mass media and big corporations and things are doing this to us. Do you think that there's some truth to that?
I think that's giving them more credit than they deserve for being intentional. I think that companies are just naturally hitting the lower level because that's where they are, and they're reflecting society. I don't think there's a huge plan to do it. I think they're doing it because they need spiritual transformation. And I think there's many people who work within these corporations that are doing this that want the spiritual transformation and just don't believe it's out there. And so we need to put examples out there where spiritual transformation works. And so, we have imperfections. We have to change ourselves and make ourselves better. Every one of us has to do that. And if we do that, we can transform the world. As you said, one person at a time for the collective salvation of humanity. And so we have to acknowledge both of those. If we only look at individual transformation, we're missing the point.
Yeah.
It's individual transformation with the purpose of collective transformation.
I spent time around 12-step. I had an addiction that I had to overcome. And they said, we'll love you until you can love yourself. That was a saying that they say to new people that are just kind of getting into recovery.
Look what you said there. We'll love you until you love yourself.
Until
you were
love
healed
yourself.
because other people loved you.
100%. They were showering love.
And so we need to shower everyone we meet with love. The end goal is being able to help myself so I can turn my light on and shower it on other people.
That's it right there. They said, it's like that's the purpose of the 12-step program. It's like paying that forward to the next person.
Yes. As a society, we should commit to teaching every child before they're 5 years old all the virtues, love and kindness and mercy and compassion and justice and unity and oneness. Every child should have that deep in their heart. Bahai children's classes. Every child in the world should be doing these. They're the virtues. I don't care whether even a Christian church could do it, a Jewish temple could do it. And people with no religion can do it. Every child should be taught these virtues at a very, very, very young age.
Beautiful.
Where there is love, nothing is too much trouble. and there is always time. Abdul Baha.
Thank you so much, Steve, for coming today. Where can people connect with you? Because I know Wayfarer is active on social media, right? Do you want to share the handle for people here?
Look up Wayfarer Studios.
I know you got a couple different companies. Is there anything else?
I would say Wayfarer Studios. You know,
Okay.
look me up through Wayfarer Studios. Also, if you're a nonprofit, Wayfarer Foundation, you can look at Wayfarer Foundation and Wayfarer Studios and see more about what I do every day. All of our philanthropy has to have a spiritual element. It doesn't have to be Bahai or even religious, but it has to have a spiritual. And people are a little surprised when we say this. One of the first questions we say is, what is your spiritual meaning for
what
existence? You know, why are you doing this? And people are always surprised. And a lot of people are pleasantly surprised for us to start asking that. You need to marry the spiritual with the material. If business or philanthropy or anything is purely material, it just won't work in the long run. You
Wow.
have to have the spiritual.
I hope you guys took that in. Keep going. Thank you for tuning in today, Steve. Thank you so much for showing up. This has been an absolute pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine.
We'll see you guys next episode.